So I'm going to talk to you about innovation and education. We really like to focus about how do we inject design into early education. As he stated, so I have a design studio. We are a small team. We're about 14 people. We do work for large companies, small companies. But the uniqueness of our studio, I think, is we really look at how can we create change? How are we going to change user behavior? And design is really the principle and our filter for everything that we do. We take the obvious and we look at it a little differently. This is a fishbowl we actually produce. This is one of our products. I think you can even purchase it here. And we really think about what is the role of design and how can it shape our lives. I think we all know, when Apple first introduced their products, they really introduced the world to the role of design. There's a reason why they stamp design in California, and it started to open up questions of, well, that means that there's people there actually thinking about how is this going to be a better product for you? How is it going to change your life? How is it going to really enhance our experience with mobile communications, right? So this is a product that we looked at in the retail world. We also look at fun objects that haven't been redesigned for a very long time, such as ping pong tables. We all love ping pong, but we used to store them in our basement. Now we elevate design, and actually it's something we celebrate. So we use design to solve problems and drive innovation. So what does this have to do with education? What does this have to do with the purpose of what we're here to talk about today? Well, everything around us is designed. If you think about your morning, that toothbrush that you held was ergonomically designed to fit properly in your hand. So if everything around us is designed, you think about the paper clip, the fork, hanger, design is used to solve problems, and it's a methodology that we use every day, and many of us don't even know it. So then you ask, so why aren't kids exposed to it in schools? Why can't kids actually use design thinking as a process for problem solving if it's so important? If it dictates the way our shampoo bottles are actually sitting on our counters? If it dictates the way we actually brush our teeth and use mobile devices? Why isn't design actually exposed to children? So about 5 years ago, we started to ask ourselves this question, and one of our clients had come to us and asked us this huge question of what's the next device in mobile communication? What's the next cell phone going to be? And we're like, wow, that's a big question. We need some big minds to help us think about that. So we said, let's go out to kids. Let's bring in some 10-year-olds. I'm sure they have answers, right? Unfiltered answers about what the next cell phone is going to be. And that's really how our relationship with schools started. And we were working with the school at Columbia University at that time. It's a very diverse school, so it was perfect, let's say, kind of environment for us to really get some interesting insights. And what we learned was a lot of great feedback came from the kids. They were able to apply what they were learning in math and science and English and actually provide some of that knowledge to our group. At the same time, our designers were really learning a lot in this external environment. There was a great collaborative effort of insights. And the school said, you know what, we want you to come back. We want you to come back and keep doing this. So we went back the next year and we did it again with a different topic. And we started to teach them about how we can use design as a way to solve problems. So about a year and a half ago, one of the faculty members called us and said, okay, we have 1 week that we want to do an integrated projects week, and we want to use that week to teach kids about design and take them through an entire process. And we said, wait a minute. 1 week is really not a lot of time. If we really want to teach students about the design process, let's really take them through it. Let's have them kind of go through what we do at our office. Let's kind of give them a brief, give them a topic at stake, and make them go through the entire steps. So the first thing that we do, right, we define the problem. What's the problem at stake? Then we research the problem. We go out, we interview people. The kids are going to have to go out and interview people, whether it's a janitor, the headmaster. Maybe they're going to interview their let's say, the schools down the street and see what they have to say about their topics. We're going to analyze and refine the problem. We're going to ideate solutions. So that's the fun part. We come up with solutions as to how do we solve this problem. We're going to prototype it. We're going to refine it again. We're going to choose a solution. And ultimately, we're going to implement it, see what the world has to say about it. So he said, okay, well, that sounds interesting. So what do? We said, okay, so let's actually take our school environment as the brief. Let's actually ask the students to rethink their basic objects. And we had them kind of rethink, the school classroom. So we took the entire 8th grade class, 45 students for this school in particular, and we said, dream up the future classroom. We put up some mandates. So we said, no interactive user interfaces on the desks. This needs to be real. There's going to be a budget in mind. We're going to give you a client, so we're going to find a partner who's actually rooted in this topic, and the topic was classroom furniture. And we're going to have them work with us through this, so you can actually learn the realities around this category. So we told the students, you're going to have to rethink the role of the locker, the chair, and the desk, right? These are objects that they surround themselves with all day long. And actually, these are objects that haven't been redesigned in a very long time. You see redesign happening at the college level, but early education, you're not really seeing much innovation going into these objects. So the kids had a lot to say. So what we did, as in every project, we actually grouped them into groups of 3 people. We gave them a kit. And a lot of people think about, oh, you need a huge budget to introduce design thinking into schools. You don't. This was the kit. A bunch of beautiful markers, construction paper, glue sticks, and paper. You can do a lot with that. Many people don't actually go back to, let's actually use our hands. Let's write again. Let's cut. Let's chop it up. Let's rethink it, throw it away, and start all over again. At the same time, kids don't get many opportunity to collaborate. That's something we do in the real world. We're grouped up with people that we don't like, and we're forced to work with them, right? So we actually teamed them up into groups of 3. There was no place and time to say, I don't want to work with that person. Too bad. They internally identified who the leader of their group was going to be. So there was one person who actually could take the lead and make sure everybody was aligned. At the same time, we gave them some templates, just something very basic to ground them and say, okay, you're going to need to fill up a few different questions. You're going to need to come up with a column of problems and then solutions. We want you to articulate a big idea in a written form, right? So you're going to have to, in one sentence, tell us your big idea. Adults can't even do that very well. Our staff sometimes struggles with that. Create an inspiration board. What are the things that inspired you? Go out and interview people. What's important for the janitor when it comes to chairs? Do they need to stack? Does he have his own needs? Of course he does. What about the teacher? Does she want to be able to move her desks around and reorganize the classroom? Absolutely she does. So that's going to mean a few things around your furniture. So they got started. In the beginning, nobody wanted to be the locker group. The chair group was what everybody celebrated, but it was really interesting, and I'll share that with you, what came out of that. And they got started, and they started working together. And they did this over the course, let's say 3 months. They would meet about twice a month to go over it. And we, as designers, went in there and kind of helped them edit their big ideas. And we had them, they started to pull their boards, right? They created these beautiful inspiration boards. We saw a lot of things that said our furniture's boring. And we kept talking about that. Well, what does boring mean? How do you solve for boring? And we got deep and we provoked and we asked questions and we thought, how can we make these things better? Bigger was something that we saw. Obviously, they felt that the furniture today did not allow for the notebook, the computer, the pencils, all the various things that they needed. So a lot of really interesting insights that they actually came and they presented to us. They actually presented to us in a very strong format. This was an interesting part that we all learned. So kids love to talk about problems, and they can identify a lot of problems, right? It's boring, it collects dust, and they can go on and on. But we force them, for every problem you identify, you must come up with a solution, which is tricky, because we can all say all the negative, but to say, how can I solve for that? How many times as a 14-year-old do you ever get that opportunity to be empowered and say, let me tell you how I'm going to solve for this bad design problem. So, they had some ideas about antimicrobial materials. How do you solve for boring? They talked a lot about integrating color. Color can solve for boring, right? Adding features and details that actually can bring these boring objects to life. So really making them go through that exercise was a really strong point for them. And then ultimately, standing up or sitting down, but talking about your idea and presenting it. So we pulled people from the outside. We called curators from museum, visionaries, creative directors, and said, come do a design crit with us. 14-year-olds are going to talk to us about the next future classroom and the furniture. So they felt that, okay, I've got an audience, and now is the time that they were able to stand up and present and articulate their idea into one sentence. You know, they talked about flexibility. They talked about relaxed EDU, relaxation in education. They named their product. So it was very real. It was very real and it was very tangible. So then what happened? Every single one of the classes, which was imperative, so they integrated this through math, science, English. It was weaved throughout the curriculum. It was real. It wasn't an extracurricular activity. It was not an after-school project. Weaved throughout the curriculum so the kids could actually apply what they were learning and what was relevant in their classroom to this project, which is critical. So it's real-world application. Students would say this was actually the first time we ever got to apply what we were learning. We actually got to do something versus just this continuous cycle. And, you know, they played with materials. They even sketched. We didn't want them to be designers. The purpose of this was not to come up with, you know, the next product for the marketplace. That was not the purpose. It was really the process of getting there, the process that we go through to really think up, you know, these new solutions for these objects that we interact with every single day, and allowing children the opportunity to really question, does this make sense? To provoke, to challenge what's actually been handed to us. And they stood up and they presented their prototypes. Some prototypes are pretty elaborate. They talked a lot about personal space and public space and this private-public relationship. And they had real-life solutions. This was an idea. This actually happened by mistake. Balls fell on a chair, and he sat on his chair, and he said, this is really comfortable. And it's kind of like the taxi bead, you know, kind of covers, right? They have these little beads on them, and it increases circulation, and we need something to increase our circulation because we're sitting all day long. At the same time, you'll notice a writable chalk surface. Kids don't get to write so much anymore. They all longed for it. Almost every single idea had a writable surface on it. Some ideas were very simple, but that's okay, because we're not looking for you to be designers, students. We're looking for you to come up with ideas and talk through your ideas. All the way through, even more detailed, an accessory solution for desks. Every classroom is different. Every classroom is going to have other needs. This is a group of students who came up with a whole accessory system. So pretty strong ideas, right? And then we brought them into the studio, which is, I think, a very important part. Get them out of the classroom, see the sketch process, see how their ideas evolved. And ultimately, we really challenged them to rethink the obvious, to think about how could this be done better, to go through the process that we go through and many other companies go through when they think about products, when they think about services, when they think about applications. Design plays a very critical role in all of those things. And here's how some of their ideas resulted. So as an agency, of course, we had to take all these brilliant insights. We gave it a shape and form, but these were all their ideas. So that accessory system you saw with the beautiful place for your cup holder, so this was their idea in depth. So they had this whole idea about a docking system, a variety of accessories would actually go in there depending in what class you're in. So for art, you would have a separate station, a separate element. You would have the same thing for biology. No matter what the class, you had a solution for it, while the base remained the same. And there are a lot of details on here that were really dictated by the students. The locker became the most celebrated category. This was a product that nobody wanted to redesign or to touch. They said, the lockers take up so much real estate, why not make them pretty? Why not use color so they can actually bring color into our hallways? A lot of details here as well. There's a bucket at the bottom because kids don't like to hang stuff. They just want to throw it in a bucket. So we built a bucket. There's a room to actually write because of writable surfaces, and there's a lot of room for storage. There's also ventilation because we learned that lockers smell, but there's no ventilation. Small details. And this ultimately was prototype. We had a wonderful partner, Bernhard Design, who said, this is so amazing. I'm going to prototype these, and I'm going to put it out to the world so they can realize the importance of not just the void in the marketplace, but what kids actually could say, how much they can actually value from this process. And he did that, and he was generous enough to actually build a booth at one of the most visited furniture fairs in New York, the ICFF. And the kids filled the space, and they actually walked editors through the space. We had New York Times, Wallpaper Magazine, Monocle. We had just about every prominent publication walk through, and the students toured them and talked about their big ideas. And they said, this detail was because of my idea. The doorknob, that was my idea. But we worked as a team, and we actually put something out that people could talk about. So it's not so important about the end product or the result. It's really about, how we got there. Isn't it wonderful to be asked, what could be possible to really allow people to be empowered versus being told what to do? And that's really what this exercise is about. And it can be scaled up and down. We continue to do this with a few other schools. Now the school at Columbia University is autonomous enough that they don't need us all the time. They integrate it every single semester, every single year. They continue to do this. They have a new category every year. This year is about what's going to be the next toy. And they go through this process, and we're teaching other schools how to do it, and so they can do it autonomously. So we do it one time, and then we can move on and do it at another school. We also do it with faculty, because if you don't teach the teachers how to integrate this, because the word innovation can be very scary, they can't integrate this in their classroom. So we had teachers rethink lunch, discipline, homework, and recess. What does it look like if we rethink what homework means for our school? And they ultimately did some pop-up solutions. This is one in their library so the world could see. And I think it kind of brings us down to some key success. How does this really kind of prove success? So create a competitive atmosphere, diversify the topics, prototype, real-world awareness, and bring the outside in. You've got to find great partners and collaborators, otherwise it won't happen. So next steps, it's really up to you, it's up to us. Encourage you to partner up with a local school, find ways to bring kids into your classroom or go to schools, because that's really the only way that this could work. Thank you.